We are live. Good evening, Broncos country. Before we get started, want to make sure we have all of our platforms included for tonight's discussion. And looks like I see green check marks across the board. Welcoming everyone to another installment of the Orange and Blue View. I am your host, Ron White. On that side of me, my co-host, my partner in crime. You know him as Dylan Von Arts. Dylan, how are you doing today, my man?
Doing pretty good, just kept it pretty easy today. I played some video games and wrote up an article. Try to relax a little bit before the podcast and try and keep my mind fresh so we can have a nice conversation here tonight.
Yeah, well, nice day for me as well. A little busy, out running some errands, doing some shopping, but uh, it was a good day. Good day. The weather's nice here as well, so pretty good overall day. Pretty good overall day. Let's see who we have in the chat tonight joining us. We got Mr. David Youngkin coming in as always. Thank you, David. We appreciate you showing support, my guy. Says, evening, everyone. Regardless of what happens tomorrow, I know the Broncos are heading into the right direction and we have our quarterback of the future. Yeah, David, I think, and I probably can speak on behalf of most by saying that's all we wanted for this year. We wanted to see with a rookie quarterback coming in if this was going to be the guy or not. And we thought that there were going to be some struggles, and we did see that early on, those first few games, which is to be expected. But, as the season went along, Bo Nix came into his own. So you can only be optimistic, at least from what you're seeing from Bo Nix on the field. And, if you start to surround Bo Nix with more pieces, this team can go far. But to your point, I am very excited, very optimistic on what the quarterback and this team can do in the future. Thank you.
Yeah, thanks for hopping in, David. Always good to see you in here. And yeah, I certainly hope this is quarterback of the future. It's looking very promising thus far. And like you mentioned, he I believe he's leading or yeah, he's tied for wins as a rookie, leading in touchdowns, passing yards, and a whole bunch of other categories. So very promising. And like you mentioned, Ron, we do need to get some more weapons on this offense, especially at tight end and running back. Obviously, wide receiver is a little shaky too, but there are some pieces there. We've seen it kind of come together with Cortland Sutton. He started slow and then has been on a quick rise after that and has become the main target. Vele looks great. Mims is finally getting some touches. We're gonna get a Troy Franklin deep touchdown here at some point. Yeah, please. I can't. We got to be jinxes, man. We bring it up every week and it just doesn't happen. But yeah, no, the future is bright and this is just the first year, so only good things to come from here on out.
Yes, definitely. Thank you, David, again for coming in, my guy. And we got C Chain coming in. Let's go, Broncos. We will win. Yes. Speak it into existence, C Chain. We will win. Again, we will get into, how the Broncos can slow down Anthony Richardson, maybe some of the matchups and whatnot. But that I do believe, Dylan, that this game, with everything that's on the line here, I think the Broncos are going to pull it out. Thank you again, C Chain, for coming in. All righty, let's see who else we have in the chat here. We have the Papa Bear, Mr. David McElrath, coming in. Thank you, David. It's always good to see you, my guy. Thank you for popping in. He says, good evening, Broncos country, Ron and Dylan. Hashtag 10 and 7. Hashtag let's go Bo. Hashtag MHH for life. Hashtag Buckham times 3. Hashtag Denver Broncos for life. Hashtag Knicks for 6. Hashtag Seal Team Knicks. Yes, David, again, thank you for coming in. Loving all the hashtags. Again, I'm gonna keep on saying it. I love the record prediction. You were staying with that running record for the whole year. And again, if things play out kind of how we're thinking they may play out, that's looking feasible. That 10-7 at minimum. At minimum is looking 10-7, and obviously will be well good enough for a playoff berth.
Definitely always good to see you, David. I get to see you 2 nights in a row. That's really awesome. And yeah, that 10-7 record, you stuck with it, and I see that plus there. So I think there's maybe a little wiggle room. Maybe we could get a little more than 10 wins. And with how this team's trending, I think anything's possible. And the rest of the schedule, while there's going to be some tough games, I think the Broncos could feasibly win out. Now I'm not going to be too overly optimistic, but there is a chance.
Always a chance.
Exactly.
Always a chance. Even if it's a 2% chance, right? There's always the possibility that the Denver Broncos can win out. It wouldn't be a surprise. But again, thank you, David, for coming in. We appreciate you, my guy. And we have Mr. Daniel Berry Sports Highlights. Thank you for coming in. Always good to see you too. He says, "Hey everyone, happy Saturday. Happy Saturday to you as well." Thank you. Thank you, Daniel. We appreciate it. And Mr. Mike S coming in. Thank you, Mike. Always good to see you too. He says, "What's up, Dylan, Ron, Scott, and Broncos country? What is up with you, Mike? Hopefully you are having a great weekend. Thank you for coming out. Thank you for coming." And Mr. String Guy coming in says, "I'm looking forward to the game tomorrow evening. Actually be home from work in time to watch the second half." Yes, String Guy, hopefully in the second half, the Broncos are near to putting the game away. But again, thank you. Thank you for coming in. We appreciate it. Let's see. There was one comment here I wanted to get to. Um, David again coming in. Thank you, David. He says the run game has to get started and not started by Mo Nix. It is time to get these running backs going. Thoughts, Dylan?
Yeah, I mean, as much as I love to see Bo Nix run and scramble and do some magic and escaping sacks and whatnot, he cannot be the focal point of this run game. Obviously, us as well as most of Broncos country want to see Audric Estime maybe get some more chances because Javonte Williams is just absolutely not cutting it. Like he's should be relegated to that Samaje Perine role. Like, hey, you come to third down, you pass protect, maybe catch a couple passes here and there, but you cannot be the brunt of this attack. You can't spearhead this attack. So it's not something I think is going to be fixed the rest of this year. I think we're stuck with what we have. But I'd like to see some more opportunities for an Estime. Get Julian more touches. He looked pretty good last week, or 2 weeks ago, I guess. But yeah, just Bo scramble when you need to, get some yards where you need to, but I don't want you leading the team in rushing. That's just a recipe for disaster, especially not just in the regular season, but when you get to the postseason, that's not going to fly.
Yeah, and David and Dylan, the team that the Broncos are going up against, they're ranked 31st against the rush, allowing 147 per game on average. So that should tell you alone there should be no excuse here for the Broncos to not find some sort of rushing attack. Again, and I think that's what we're looking for here, Dylan. Now, I know, we're pining for that one every down back. And we thought that Javonte probably could have been that. But as you just alluded to, we're not seeing that at all. So even if they stick with the running back by committee, where you have McLaughlin in here, we can have Audric Estime in here at times as well. But there needs to be some sort of rushing rhythm, if you will. And that's just not there. Now, I think, Sean Payton's mentioned that he wanted to see more Audric Estime. Well, where is he? We haven't seen him a lot. So I do think down the stretch here, I like McLaughlin. Don't get me wrong, but I just think you need to fold in estimate more, especially against a lot of these bigger and heavier fronts. I think estimate kind of stacks up well with that. With Jaleel McLaughlin coming in and giving you some meaningful snaps. But yeah, David, it's time to at least pick up some yards here on the ground, at least establish a rhythm, because you're going to need that if the Broncos are talking playoffs. Again, you're going to need, and in conjunction with this good defense, that running game is paramount. And so they need to figure something out until um, maybe, I think there might be thoughts of Bidet coming back possibly. And I think that was going to be that guy, Dylan. But, they need to figure out how to work in this running game, especially if they're trying to do this playoff push.
Yeah, and hopefully we get a Mims sort of epiphany with Sean Payton, like, oh, this guy's actually pretty good when I use him and try and get the ball in his hands. So, would love to see that with the running game because it's been severely lacking all year.
Yeah, for sure, for sure. Thank you, David, for coming in. All right, guys, let's see here. So we all know that your Denver Broncos, when it comes to looking at, you know, the lines and the favorites for these games, that they're no longer becoming underdogs, Dylan. So speaking of that, underdog is the place to play if you're a sports fan looking to win money while watching sports. Join over 5 million fans who are already playing on Underdog. With their Pick'em game, you could win money by making entries with your favorite players. Compete against other players just by selecting higher or lower on two or more players' stats, and you could win up to 1,000 times your money. So turn every touchdown into a win with Underdog.
With their champs game, you could win up to 1,000 times your money just by choosing higher or lower on player stats like passing yards, interceptions, touchdowns, and much more. Like, for example, will Bo Nix have higher or lower than 237.5 passing yards next week? Will Nix have higher or lower than 1.5 passing touchdowns? Every dog deserves a second chance, and with Underdog Rescues, you can get your money back and receive a promo if an early injury causes your entry to lose.
So download the Underdog app today and use code MHuddle to get up to 1,000 in bonus cash instantly. Again, download the Underdog app today and use our code MHuddle to get up to $1,000 in bonus cash instantly. Every player, every touchdown. Just select higher or lower on Underdog.
Must be 18 plus, 19 plus Alabama, Nebraska, 19 plus in Colorado for some games, 21 plus Massachusetts and Arizona, and present in a state where Underdog Fantasy operates. Terms apply. Void in Colorado. Concerned with your play? Call 1-800-GAMBLER or visit ncpgambling.org. Arizona, 1-800-NEXT-STEP or text NEXT STEP to 53342. New York, call the 24/7 Hope line at 1-877-8-HOPE-NY or text HOPE-NY.
Alrighty. So, Dylan, let's move to the Broncos' approach, kind of in your mind, as it pertains to containing the Colts quarterback, Anthony Richardson. So, we all know that the guy has talent. Coming out of Florida, he was, I guess he was a project somewhat, but he was still talented nonetheless. And we see glimpses of it, but you also see where some of the deficiencies are. And you see that in his completion percentage. I think which is right at 50 or maybe a little tad under 50% here now. So I guess with how Shane Steichen runs the offense, incorporating a lot of those, quarterback, those design runs. Um, how do you think Vance Joseph should attack this? Like, what do you see as, kind of the challenge maybe on the defense here for what they can face up with Anthony Richardson?
Well, I believe it starts with the defensive line trying to keep Anthony Richardson in the pocket and forcing him to throw in that short and intermediate range. Obviously, he's good at throwing some deep bombs, and as much as I would like the Broncos to leave a spy on him, I don't know if that's viable. I think you need to have some extra coverage over to help a Levi Wallace, who we saw struggle mightily against the Browns, and we don't want a repeat of that because there are a few good receivers on this team. You got a Michael Pittman, Josh Downs, A.D. Mitchell is good when he can catch the ball. He's got some drop problems there, but all in all, a pretty good receiver core. And normally I wouldn't be worried, but without Riley Moss back there, it's pretty concerning. Um, it's tough. I mean, luckily we do have a lot of talent along the line. Obviously, both our outside linebackers and Jonathan Cooper, Nick Benito have been solid all year, and the interior is what I'm really excited about in this matchup. But even all along the line, there's injuries all across at starting tackle for the Colts. As we know, Braden Smith is going to be out for this game.
Mm-hmm.
So, hey, maybe you need to put Nick Benito there and get some quick pressure because he gets off the line like that. And, if he can shoot around the corner quick and not give Anthony Richardson a chance, that's going to be the best way to stop this offense.
Yeah, yeah, you bring up some good points. The way the way I see this is, again, Vance Joseph just mixing it up, confusing Richardson in a multitude of ways. Now I know you're maybe not the biggest fan of having that spiral, and I don't want that to be there all the time, but I do think there are instances where that may be beneficial. So he could assign like a hook or curl defender as the spiral at times in certain packages. There's also a way where, um, obviously the defender plays their zones and they can abandon it if they see Anthony Richardson start to run. But I think what's going to be really helpful here is collapsing the center of the pocket. Collapsing the pocket, and then you can have at times the defensive line set the edge, depending on if that 5 or 6 man front, to force him to move laterally. Um, you also see that Joseph is heavy when it comes to blitzing, but I think the blitzes need to be a little bit strategic here. So you can bring it all out at times, but I do think sometimes the delayed blitz also comes into play and can be very important where, you run that 4 man pressure where that initial 3 down can rush the quarterback. And then you have that one defender come and just blitz a few steps late. So again, I think with some of those different approaches, I think that's enough, in my opinion, where Joseph can kind of just knock Richardson off his spot, where he's just sensing pressure all day in the pocket, and most oftentimes than not, you know, can't get the ball down the field to a complete pass. And even I think Jonathan Cooper spoke to this as well, Dylan, of creating, turnovers. Like they can get up, collapse the pocket, knock the ball out, cause the fumble, strip sack. So there are different ways to just knock Anthony Richardson off the spot. And I do believe with some of the ways I mentioned, that's a way to kind of make them uncomfortable.
100%. And like you mentioned, you got to get pressure on him. But even if you can't get home and get a sack, you need to hit this guy. He's a big quarterback. You're gonna have to hit him a little harder, but legally, obviously. But you want to make him feel it. And he's still a young guy. I mean, he's got about as many starts as Bo Nix, I believe. And he was a guy coming out of college who was a little bit of a project, but it was mostly he didn't have a lot of reps. And then he gets benched for 2 games. So now he's losing out on even more reps. So I think, like you mentioned, delayed blitzes or even just full up blitzes, but you got to be strategic with it. You got to rattle him and make him say, "Oh, I got to get this ball out now." If you can't get a forced fumble or a sack, at least cause an errant throw. That's what you got to do. And yeah, just stack up hits on him and make him really think about, oh God, is Benito coming around the corner again? Is Jonathan Cooper? Oh my God, am I going to get blown up the middle?
Jonah Ellis. Yeah,
Jonah
Jonah
Ellis,
Ellis in
exactly.
certain packages. Yeah, yeah.
We got a bunch of dogs, especially up the middle. So I'm excited for this game for sure, especially defensively.
Yes. Should be a big game from the defensive line. Big game. Big game. Looking forward to it. Let's see who else we have in here. I'm gonna grab this here. We got Heath Holmes. Thank you, Heath. Says, hey, Dylan and Ron, I really think the Chargers may have peaked. I'm more nervous about this Colts game than the Bolts game on Thursday, given their current state. Thoughts? Yeah, Heath. They're pretty. Yeah, they're pretty banged up. The Chargers are very banged up. I believe Herbert is playing tomorrow against the Bucks. I know he has that issue with the ankle. I still think they're going to win. But J.K. Dobbins, and I'm not even not sure of the status of Lad McConkey. So and Quentin Johnston's just hit very more miss than hit.
Bricks for hands.
Yeah, and so they have a lot of key injuries, and I just if well, we know Dobbins is out. Wow. But if McConkey isn't playing, then I'm not so nervous about the game Thursday. Now, the Chargers still do have a solid defense, and that's something to obviously take into consideration and to respect. We saw that in the first matchup. I even saw it in the game against Atlanta. I think there were like 4 interceptions that they had. So they're still good defensively. But just offense, what are you going to do? So again, I'm not so worried. And I think Heath here, the Chargers know that they're in the playoffs. So I think even if they do lose to the Broncos, I mean, it's probably a good chance they're still there. But I think the Colts one, I think, is a more important game just because of the nature of the two teams, right? The Colts are chasing. They're still they're in the hunt. So, they're going to be desperate coming to Mile High, try to get this win. So I do think that's why this game tomorrow is of the utmost importance. Thank you for coming in.
Yeah, thanks for coming in, Heath. Good to see you. I don't know if I've seen your name before, so welcome to the chat. You're exactly right, Ron. I mean, this team is the top team, the Colts, that is in the hunt. And you mentioned they're hungry. They're coming into Denver to steal a win and increase their playoff chances. Obviously, the Chargers have a very good shot at making the playoffs. It's probably very similar to us. So a win over them is important, yes. It's mostly for seeding, though. It's not for getting knocked out and back into the hunt. We don't want that. And like you mentioned, there's a lot of injuries with the Chargers, McConkey. Joey Bosa could breathe wrong and get injured. That dude always seems something pops up with him. But there's a lot of injuries. But like you mentioned, this defense is still very good. I think it's going to come down to the trenches on both sides for the Broncos. Obviously, offensively, we have a very good line. I'm only giving up 19 sacks this season. That's incredible. Much credit to the offensive line and Bo Nix. And then on the defensive side, the Chargers with Joe Alt and Rashawn Slater, those are some pretty good tackles. They've only surrendered 8 sacks combined. So we're gonna have to find a way to get after them. But Herbert might have to hold on that ball longer, like you mentioned. If McConkey's out, you don't fully trust Quentin Johnston. He might take a little longer to get open. Herbert's gonna have to hold on to that ball, and that spells disaster. Despite their tackles, because obviously we have a great interior defensive line. So that push up the middle, whether it's a rookie quarterback or a veteran, that's the worst thing for a quarterback is that pressure up the middle. So and the Buccaneers game, they're going to be playing the Buccaneers. That's a tough team. You don't get healthier this this time of the season. You only get worse.
Mm-hmm.
So, and then short week, Thursday night
But
game.
you're right.
So it's going to be a dogfight still, but I do think, to your credit here, Heath, the Chargers are cooling off. I think they've peaked a little bit just because of injuries or lack of talent on the offensive skill positions.
Yeah, and well, we know, Jim Harbaugh's philosophy: great defense, run the football, and they have won. And again, they've been running the football well early, but now again with that injury to Dobbins, you're not seeing as much explosion in the run game, and now you have a hobbled Herbert. So but it's going to be interesting to kind of see how they close out the season and kind of enter the playoffs. A state they are, but yeah, I agree with you, Heath. But again, thank you, Heath, for coming in. Great comment there. And is it String Guy's birthday? Happy birthday, String Guy.
There we go. Happy birthday, my man.
Hopefully
Coming in and celebrating with us on your
Yes.
birthday. Okay.
Yes. Happy. Good to be 21 again, as I say.
There we go.
All right. Thank you, Wolf, for shouting out. And we got Ernie Mays coming in. Thank you, Ernie. He says, "Go Broncos country only. Go Bo Nix. 9-5. Oh, 9-5 tomorrow. Hello, Ron and Dylan. Hello to you too, Ernie. Thank you again for coming in. And yeah, if the Broncos take care of business at home, they will be 9-5 heading into the short week.
Yeah, you see all the scenarios like, oh, if the Broncos win this game, but they lose some of these and all that, I don't care about any of that. Take care of business on your end. I don't want to work. I'm sick of. Was it last year? It's like, yeah, you have to win, but also if we get help from this team and that team, take care of your own business. That's what they got to do. This is a different Broncos. It's not the mamby-pamby stuff we saw the last 8 years, man. We got to just take care of business at home. I don't care if the Colts are hungry. The Broncos want this more. I think so, especially with a rookie quarterback.
Well, also, Dylan, I think, last year when the talks of possibly playoffs were there, they were awaiting help. But now the Broncos they're in the driver's seat.
Mm-hmm.
So it's different. They control their own destiny. So if they take care of business tomorrow, then I think analytics has it now. Now it's a 70% chance of making the playoffs. I think that rises up into the low to mid 90s if they win tomorrow. So again, if they take care of business tomorrow, then their chances even go up more. But again, Ernie, thank you for coming in. We appreciate it, my guy. And then seeing here now, we have some running back talk here in the chat. Let's see here. So I know there are some Genty fans. And I think the Heisman ceremony is coming up shortly. If it's not already on, it's coming up later.
Oh, that totally even skipped my mind. I forgot that was happening tonight. So
yeah, so that should be interesting to see who walks away. I mean, I think with that, probably going to be Travis Hunter, more than likely. Just because what he's asked to do. Like he's just a phenomenal athlete. He's a phenomenal athlete. All right, let's see who else we have in the chat. Just give me a second, guys. I saw one. I'm trying to look through. Yeah, Shandy Bracy. Speaking of the running back talk, wanted to pull a question or comment there. Drafting a running back will be top of Sean's list, I'm sure. Yes, Shandy. I think the two positions that will be on the top of Sean's list: tight end, running back. Now I don't know what order, but round 1, round 2, for sure. Again, I know Genty is probably the apple of their eye. But depending on where the Broncos select versus relative to other teams and wants and needs of these teams, it's going to be difficult. Now there might be a scenario where there's like pick 18, 19, and Genty hasn't been selected yet, and if the Broncos are within striking distance, they can move up to try to grab them, depending on what that cost is to move up, obviously. But yeah, I would say Genty. Um, I know we mentioned other guys like Amarion Hampton and Nicholas Singleton, Caleb Johnson. But yeah, running back for sure and tight end. We already know who's. I think you guys already know who's number one tight end on my list. But there's Colston Loveland and Gunnar Helm. So there are a few others. Tight end is a little bit more top heavy, but running back is just deep. Running back is deep all around. So there are going to be quite a few prospects for the Broncos to select from. But yeah, Sean, running back is right there near the top of the list.
Definitely, and like we mentioned at the top of the show, wide receiver is a need too, but I think that we've got a little softer on that idea. I think tight end running backs got to be the play. Maybe interior defensive line, depending on how you feel about are you going to get John Franklin Myers extended and whatnot. You want to keep that rotation strong as well. Always have as many pass rushers as you can on that defensive line. But I agree. I think running backs and tight ends probably top of the list there. I'm a little shy taking a tight end in the first round, but if Sean, much like with Bo Nix, if he knows his guy's there and it's a tight end or running back, go take him. And we know Sean's not shy to trade up. So if there is a scenario where he absolutely loves Ashton Genty, I mean, probably going to have to pay a pretty penny to get up there because I don't think he gets past the Cowboys at 10. Yeah. So it's tough. But yeah, you mentioned a handful of running backs there. Nicholas Singleton's a guy I was watching a lot of tape of actually yesterday, and he looks pretty good, man.
He's nice. But yeah, he was kind of underrated for me. Like I think Kendall actually put me on to when I was watching. Kendall mentioned Nick Singleton, and I went to look at his film. I'm like, oh, he's explosive.
Catches the ball
catches the ball well, and just a good speed. Like, yeah, he's pretty good. And I would say, maybe in that third round, if you're looking, that might be a guy they try to target. But yeah, he's good. Caleb Johnson's good as well. So yeah, there are quite a few. But I think, Dylan, I know you mentioned not tight end first round, but I don't know. I just think the Broncos have more freedom now to pick whoever they want because with the extension of Garrett Bowles, that leaves it open. And I think now the Broncos can go into it focusing on playmakers. First, I would say the premium rounds give both some more playmakers. So get that running back or get that tight end, or if you wish, get that receiver. And then, maybe in these later rounds, start to fill in with depth. Obviously, you mentioned defensive line. You can never have enough good defensive linemen. Make a strength stronger. That's how I see it. And then also depth at safety. I think that's also important when looking at this draft as well. Definitely safety depth. All righty. Let's see who else we have. We got Mr. Ralph coming in. Mr. Breaks Girl Ralph. Thank you from Facebook. He says, excited for a dub tomorrow. This Bronco team takes care of the teams they should beat. Thank you all, MHH, for your hard work. Again, a little bit newer name for me, but thank you, Ralph, for coming in. And yes, excited for the game tomorrow. Excited for a little bit nervous for what's at stake, but I think it's an excited nervous, if you will. And yeah, I think this Broncos team should take care of business. Again, they've been doing it all year with taking care of the teams that they're supposed to take care of. And I do think that continues tomorrow. And as we were just alluding to here, Ralph, with ways to get to the quarterback. The opposing team's quarterback. I think the Broncos have, the personnel on defense to do it. Now, they should learn from that Cleveland game for sure, and I think they're going to be prepared. With I think Reese Taylor has been elevated now, and on the team. So Reese Taylor, and then you put in Chris Abrams Drain. So I think in the absence of Riley Moss, this team, obviously no one is Riley Moss, but this team should be well equipped on the back end for tomorrow. Thank you again for coming in, Ralph.
Yeah, thanks for coming, Ralph. I definitely haven't seen your name on Saturday nights, but hey, great to have you in here. And you're exactly right. The Broncos should take care of business. The defense, I'm not super worried about, to be honest. Besides, like you mentioned, maybe shade some coverage over to Levi Wallace's side, wherever he's roaming there. And then offensively, I was looking at the depth chart a little bit before we got on here, and
Mm-hmm.
the Colts cornerbacks outside of Kenny Moore don't really scare me. Kenny Moore is more of a nickel guy.
Nickel, yeah.
So I think Sutton's going to be able to feast. Maybe get Vele on the outside. Mims with his speed. Nothing overly terrifying. I know Nick Cross is a pretty decent safety there. I know he took out his own guy, I believe, in training camp and wasn't very remorseful about it. So he's got that dog in him for sure. But I'm not sure he's going to be able to keep up with Broncos offense, which is something I wouldn't have said at the beginning of the season.
Yeah.
But Bo Nix looks great. The weapons are starting to get some momentum. So, yeah, I think there's a very good chance we take home the W tomorrow.
Yeah, and I was actually doing the same thing, looking at the depth chart, and I'm with you. Yeah, Kenny Moore's probably their best on that back end playing the nickel. I know Zaire Franklin is a nice tackling machine at middle linebacker. So we'll see kind of in space how he handles it with the RBs that we have. And yeah, I mean, up on the defensive line, you got Kwity Paye, DeForest Buckner, and those two are good. I definitely want to call out that the talent of those two for sure. But I think, I'm taking Broncos offensive lineman over that defensive line. And then, we'll see kind of how the other chips stack up with Zaire Franklin. And if Sean Payton does, make the decision to stick with the run, and if we see some more Estime, kind of how that matchup looks as well. But again, Ralph, thank you. Thank you for coming in with that. We appreciate it from Facebook. And we got Rodney Garcia coming in. Good evening, Ron and Dylan and Broncos country. Go Broncos, watching WWE Saturday night's main event. Cool.
There we go, my man. I'll be watching that once we
You'll be watching
wrap
that
it
after?
up here. Oh, yeah.
Yeah. Yes, cool. Thank you. And then Mike S., they definitely should flex Bengals versus Broncos on Saturday. I know it was rumored that they will. At least that's what I saw on X. I haven't seen anything as far as, a specific time. Well, because I don't know. I think it was going to be Saturday or Sunday, and I think the date was still being decided along with the time. So I'm just not sure where that is.
Yeah, I did see, I believe it was Benjamin Albright said he has some sources saying that it would be Saturday. So that's pretty cool. But yeah, time is not released yet. But yeah, that'd be cool to get a Saturday game for sure.
Yeah. And again, Mike, it's so good now that Broncos are being flexed in to stuff as opposed to flexed out. Probably at the beginning of last year and the Nathaniel Hackett year, we more than likely would have been flexed out of things. But with a Sean Payton-led offense and, one quarterback that is in the offensive rookie of the year conversation, I think the nation wants to see that under the bright lights. So it's good that that's happening. Thank you, Mike, for coming in. We appreciate it. All right, let's do a time check. So we're coming up on 40 minutes. All right, so got a little bit more time to see kind of what questions we have. Let's just see here. Got String Guy coming in with a comment. Thank you again, String Guy. Says, I'm glad they re-signed Bowles, but I still want some O-line picks, even if developmental players. Dylan, as you're shaking your head, what are your thoughts here?
Yeah, man, you need to have those developmental tackles, especially. Obviously, we have Frank Crum on the roster. Not sure how he's coming along.
Yeah,
Haven't heard too much about him,
he's a few
but
years
he's
away
he's
still.
he's pretty raw.
Yeah.
And you want to see the Broncos add not even just a tackle, but in general across this offensive line, because one injury and that just screws up the whole cohesiveness of your line. And you want someone who could step in and maybe not have the same amount of success, but you want to have some kind of cushion there, right? And I think center is somewhere where I'd look to just
Mhm.
have some extra help there. I think Luke Wattenberg's been pretty good this year, but you could always look to upgrade. Sean Payton loves the offensive line, as is
Mhm.
evident from paying now Ben Powers, Quinn Miners, McGlinchey, and Bowles. So that center spot could be next, and it's always worth it to invest in the trenches, whether it be offense or defense.
Yeah, string guy, I'm there with you. Um, Again, I loved, you know, the resigning with Bulls. I've been calling for it for a while. So I'm glad that that's happened. But yeah, that still should not, preclude the Broncos from drafting, you know, tackles, guards, just offensive linemen in general. And I would start, Dylan, looking to just draft a developmental tackle.
Mm-hmm.
The Broncos haven't drafted a tackle since Bowles, and it's just come on, like it's time to draft a tackle, develop him, because again, with McGlinchey and Bowles, you have them signed for a while, which is great, but you're still going to need some depth behind them, and the depth currently outside of Alex Palczewski, the depth behind a tackle is just it ain't good. It ain't good. So it's time that they look for sure string guy, start at tackle, and then look to, like you said, Dylan, you mentioned it, a center, um, and also a guard. Try to look at the guard spots as well, but I would prioritize it as far as a developmental position perspective: tackle, center, then guard.
Mm-hmm. And I have a lot of trust in Zach Street as the offensive line coach. He's done a phenomenal job with the line as a whole, and yeah, just develop what you can behind your starters, because you never know, one injury could screw up everything.
Yep. Yep. All righty. Let's see. And again, thank you, Stringar, for coming in. Again, no Scott tonight, guys. So we are just kind of manning the chat. Just want to see who else we have. Um, Paul Schaefer coming in saying, thank you, Paul, again for coming. He says, their running game is the only thing that scares me. Yeah. Um, I think if you were to be, you know, nervous or concerned about any aspect to this Colts team, it's Jonathan Taylor. Um, we know what Jonathan Taylor can do. He's just an all around, all purpose back. Um, and so that's one person you really have to account for. He's good with busting out a lot of those long runs. He can catch the ball. So that is one playmaker on their team that um, I wouldn't say necessarily scares me per se, because the Broncos have been very good with stopping the run. But I just think it's one of those things you kind of have to account for, and plan for in addition to Anthony Richardson when just stopping the running attack in general. But yeah, good call up there, Paul.
Yeah, definitely, Paul. Thank you for coming in. And this is going to be a big, maybe the biggest matchup in terms of what the Broncos need to stop, because Jonathan Taylor is still a great running back. I think the Colts offensive line's pretty shaky still.
Yeah, they got some injury. Yeah, they're gonna have injuries, and
so
yeah,
you got to take advantage of that. Sucks to be them. It's not us. we got a great defensive line going against them, and I really trust those interior guys, whether it's a DJ Jones, Zach Allen, Franklin Myers, or Malcolm Roach. They're all dogs, man, and that's what we haven't had on this team for a long time. We were getting used to teams getting up a couple scores and then just running out the clock. No more of that. We're done with that. I'm pretty excited about this matchup, and I think they should be able to do a good job containing Jonathan Taylor. Like you mentioned, this not just the run defense, but the defense as a whole has been great all season, and especially with the hometown crowd behind them, things are going to get it's going to be rocking in Mile High for sure.
Yes, yes, for sure, for sure. Thank you again, Paul, for coming in. And we got Ralph back in. Thank you, Ralph. It's good to see you again, my guy. He says, what are the chances we can move up in the seating? I really want to go to KC and spank them. I always catch you guys on Apple Pods. Oh, thank you, Ralph. That's so good to hear. Thank you for tuning in. We always appreciate you and all of you for tuning in. Yeah, as far as moving up in seating, if the Broncos take care of business, and if you see the Ravens and or the Chargers start to falter, those chances increase. Now, I would say there may be chances moving up in seating probably around 50%, I would imagine. Because, as we said, with the Chargers, given that they're a little banged up now, and, they have this Bucks game, which, the Bucks aren't any slouch. And then they have us on Thursday, and I think they end the season with the Raiders and the Patriots. So they do have two final games that are quite easy, but these next two games are going to be tough for them. And of course, if Broncos win Thursday, get that tiebreaker, they can move up. And with the Ravens, sort of a similar situation. They'll beat the Giants this weekend.
They better.
And then they have, I don't have the schedule up in front of me. I know they have the Steelers coming up, and then the Browns again. And, the Browns beat them earlier in the season. So again, it's not an easy slate for the Ravens either. But yeah, if those teams start to falter, and if Denver keeps winning, that seeding can improve to the 6th seed and even possibly the 5th. I think Dylan, and I see what you're saying here, Ralph, as far as going to Kansas City. I want the Texans the first round. I want the Texans the first. I do think that's going to be such. I mean, obviously there are no easy games in the NFL, but how the Texans look right now, like C.J. Stroud has regressed, and I know not all of it is fault, right? They've had injuries on the offensive line. Stephon Diggs is out for the season, so there are a lot of different variables in that. But that's a team I think the Broncos can whip handedly. And then, from there, we'll see what happens. But yeah, I do think there is a good chance, Ralph. I say all that to say there is a good chance, Ralph, that, that the Broncos can move up in seeding depending on what else happens with the other two teams.
I'm in full agreement. If we're going to have to face anyone in the playoffs in the first round, I want the Texans. Like you mentioned, CJ Stroud's trending down. Just haven't had it really this year. Obviously, they were missing Nico Collins for a little bit. You mentioned Stephon Diggs has been out in their defense. Two prolific edge rushers, but beyond that, I mean, Derek Stingley's pretty good, but there's no one outside of that really scares me. It's funny to say, yeah, two great edge rushers, but that doesn't scare me. But, as a whole, that defense is not anything to write home about. And, it's that sophomore slump for not just CJ Stroud, but DeMeco Ryans. The team's obviously still leading their division. How bad can they be? But it's not the hopeful Texans that we saw last year that went in with a rookie coach and quarterback and won a playoff game. So, yeah, I would definitely like to see them. And, yeah, spank Kansas City in their own home in the playoffs. That would be money. But I just be happy to be back in the playoffs, man. That's just something I didn't see us doing this season. The fact that we're talking about being in the driver's seat and controlling our own destiny instead of waiting on other teams or just, trying to barely sneak in. Destiny's in our hands, man.
Yeah, and it's so good to see. And speaking of Texans, as far as rooting guide, you want to root for them tomorrow. So they played the Miami Dolphins, and that's another team that's in the hunt. I think they're at 6-7, same record as the Colts. Um, so you want to root for the Texans to beat the Dolphins tomorrow. Just again, just putting that out there. But yeah, Texans definitely round one for sure, for sure. Let's see. Thank you again, Ralph, for coming in. String Guy coming in again. He says, "Thank you, String Guy." Again, he says, "Ron and Dylan, who do you think they play at cornerback? If not Levi Wallace tomorrow, it'll be the rookie. It'll be Chris Abrams-Dream tomorrow. Um, expect, and the coaching staff mentioned it, that he's ready to play. He's ready to go in. And it's kind of maddening with the Browns game that they, kind of waited so late, Dylan, to shift help over there and even put in KD in the game. But yeah, expect a heavy dose of him, String Guy, with maybe some sightings of Mathis too, with some help. With some help.
Yeah, that was really frustrating a couple weeks ago. They weren't shading coverage over to Levi Wallace when he was struggling, but when Abrams Drain came in, it's like, okay, let's start to give him some help. It's like, I don't care if he's a rookie or a freaking 10-year vet, man. If you need help, you need help. So hopefully they shore that up. But yeah, like you mentioned, I think Chris Abrams-Jane is going to be that first guy to step up. He looked great in training camp. He's a little smaller, but he's fast and he's very scrappy. Might as well see what we got him. I mean, it's already the end of the season, but you weren't really expecting. No one expects injuries, but Riley Moss to go down, so it's hampered this passing defense, and hopefully that gets shored up because we don't need the Browns game to become a trend.
Yeah, no. Can't let that happen. And again, prayers up. Hopefully Riley Moss comes back. Now we may not need it. I think we might be able to get by if he's not ready to go Thursday. We may be able to get by with the Chargers game just because no one really on offense scares you with the Chargers as far as their passing game. Again, I think even if McConkey doesn't go, who they have, Josh Palmer and
Johnston,
and I forgot. I think Will Disley's been banged up too.
I think he's done for the season. If I remember correctly. So
yeah,
yeesh, I thought we were pretty bad there, but
yeah. So I think no one here cheers. But again, thank you, String Guy, for coming in. Okay, we're a little over 50 minutes, so we're approaching that mark. I want to grab one question, then we'll get into some injuries and our predictions for tomorrow. This is a good one. Thank you, Tyler Brooks, for coming in. A little new name for me, but we appreciate it. He says, "Can we win it all this year if hit on all cylinders, fellas? Offense-driven league now." Sean got it. Well, if you get to the dance, Tyler, anything can happen. You saw what happened when the Bengals got in. When was that? Like a few years ago, and marched right on up to the Super Bowl. Of course, beating Kansas City in the process. So, if everything's clicking on all cylinders to what you said, if Broncos stay clear of the injury bug, key, and if the Broncos can, find a rushing attack, I think it's possible. Again, no one in the AFC. I would say Buffalo's a little bit, scary a bit. But I mean, we just saw what happened on Sunday, and that was a high scoring. That was a good game too. High scoring game with the Rams, and Rams got them. And Buffalo's matchup tomorrow is not easy either with the Lions. Yeah. So, I mean, if the Broncos can continue good defense, continue to get that running game going, and if Bo Nix can continue to play well, I mean, it's not out of the realm of the possible. It's not out of the realm of the possible. I mean, because as you see, a lot of those teams there in the AFC are, around 8-5, and all you have is a 12-1 Chiefs team. Let's be honest, Dylan, they don't scare anybody. That 12-1 record is mostly luck. As we can see, and there are a lot of one-score games within that too. And then I just talked about the Bills. They may scare you a bit, but they can be had. And then the Steelers. I mean, they're getting by kind of similar to the Broncos with that good defense.
Mm-hmm.
Um, but I think if the Broncos have to play the Steelers this time about, I think the Broncos will be more prepared. Bo Nix has definitely taken strides. So yeah, I think Tyler, if everything goes right and depending on the matchups, you know, um, you know, it could happen. They can go the way. Now, obviously, it depends on who's in the NFC coming out. And really outside the Lions and Eagles in the NFC, no one really fears me in the NFC. Um, but yeah, it could happen. The possibility is there, Tyler. The possibility is there.
Yeah, Tyler. I mean, it's going to be tough, and we would want it to be too easy. We like to have a little suspense, but yeah, anything's possible. The offense has been clicking. I think what gives them the best chance is obviously how well their defense has been playing, and assuming Riley Moss is back uh, for a run like that. Certainly, it comes down to, is Bo Nix gonna level out in some of his play? Obviously, against pressure, he's been not so great. He's eluded some sacks and made some pretty amazing plays, but by and large, he's made some pretty boneheaded plays, like throwing across his body and stuff when he gets pressure. And it's like, that's rookie stuff, and that'll get ironed out. It's not like he can't fix that, but it's going to come down to the offense. It's like, do you have the right playmakers? I know we love them, and I mentioned they are getting better, but a non-existent run game in the playoffs, that's
Can't happen.
spells disaster. No,
Can't
you
happen.
can't. You absolutely can't. And are they just going to magically find it when they get there? Hopefully, maybe. I hope so. But it's probably just going to be hampering them until next year. So, is there a chance? Absolutely. So, none of these teams, like you mentioned, the Bills, pretty scary. I mean, Josh Allen is an absolute beast.
Mm-hmm.
6 touchdowns on his own last week. I mean,
Yeah.
imagine if the Bills had a defense. I think we'd be talking about them being the first seed right now. But the only team I think I'm truly, truly scared of is probably the Ravens.
Yeah.
I mean, they absolutely killed us last time, and I just don't think. They say it's a matchup league, right? And sometimes you just don't match up good with against other teams, and I think that's the case for the Broncos and Ravens.
Yeah. Yeah. And that's well. I think what's going to happen. I still think Pittsburgh's going to win the division, and that's probably going to set up for possibly for a third game of the season between the Steelers and the Ravens. And again, the Steelers just match up well with the Ravens. Like they match their physicality. Because that's what you have to do in order to beat the Ravens. You have to match them physically. Um, and with TJ Watt and Alex Highsmith and that D line of the Steelers is something special. They could be a little bit had on the back end. I'm not too sold on their back end, but that front, they know they can stop the run and pressure the quarterback very well. So it's going to be interesting to see Tyler. But great question. Great question. Not out of the realm of the possible. Not out of the realm of the possible. All right. So let's hit injuries and then we'll get into our score predictions. So for tomorrow, the only person on the Broncos that has been designated as out will be our corner and Riley Moss. So Riley Moss is officially out for tomorrow, still kind of nursing that knee injury. I know Brandon Jones and Tremon Smith, they were a little bit limited this week, but I haven't seen them as being out or questionable. So more than likely they will go. For the Colts, I wouldn't say it's a laundry list, but it's a little more extensive than what Denver has. Jalen Carley's is questionable. Josh Downs is questionable. Ryan Kelly is questionable. Mo Alley Cox is questionable. Ashton Doolin is out, and as you mentioned, Dylan Braden Smith has been designated as out as well. All righty, so prediction time, Dylan. How do you see this matchup unfolding?
Well, we mentioned all throughout the show. I think this Broncos defense is absolutely amazing. I think they're going to force Anthony Richardson in some really tough situations, and they're going to make him play very erratically. He's going to probably throw a pick. I think Nick
For
Bonito.
sure.
I want him to, yeah, right. And I want Nick Bonito to have a great game. Obviously, with Braden Smith out, I would take advantage of that matchup. Go. I think he could get at least, and maybe this is too optimistic. A bold take. We'll say at least 2 sacks. I think that's very possible for him. So, all in all, I have the Broncos winning 30-17 and increasing their chances for the playoffs for the first time since 2015.
Yeah, I Dylan, I can see a scenario in this game where each each pass rusher, the starters and the ones coming in on rotation, have at least a sack. It could happen. I just think the Broncos have to have that aggressive mentality as they gear toward this playoff push, and I also think that Vance Joseph learned his lesson from that Browns game. That it's going to be just pressure, pressure, pressure on Anthony Richardson. Um, and with that, there are going to be many opportunities where the defense can capitalize on his inconsistent play. And while doing that, contain a Jonathan Taylor. And on offense, I think this is the breakout game for the running backs. It has to be. We have to get that at some point. Again, what we would like to have that every down back, as I mentioned, but hell, we'll take by committee over 100 yards. I think
Yeah.
that we'll sign up for that any day. And this is the perfect time for them to do that against this 31st ranked defense. So with that, I have an astounding victory for the Broncos. Broncos 34, Colts 17.
There we go. Hell yeah.
All righty, guys. Well, that concludes our episode for tonight. We really appreciate all of you tuning in with your questions, your comments. We love to answer and dive into the Broncos. If you have not done so already, make sure you subscribe to the channel, like the podcast, and share across all of the platforms. It helps us to grow the community. And if you have not done so already, make sure you follow us on X, formerly known as Twitter. I am at Ron White NFL. My partner here is at Dylan Von Arks MHH. Before we get out of here, Dylan wants to thank a few members that supported us tonight. I'll turn it over to Dylan.
Yeah, thank you everyone for joining the chat tonight. Very lively discussion as always. We can't run this show without you guys, and you always bring thought-provoking questions and get us to an hour plus every Saturday night. So that's always great to see. But I want to show a little extra love to those who donated to us tonight, our super chat superstars, if you will. Papa Bear, David McGrath, as always, coming in first, and Ralph. Thank you so much. A newer name. Thank you so much for coming in and not just giving us your time, but giving us great questions as well. So thank you all so much for joining us tonight.
Yes. Thank you all again for tuning in and enjoy the game tomorrow. Hopefully, the Broncos will come out on top and improve their record to 9-5. Until then, have a great rest of your evening, and we will see you all next week. Go Broncos.
Go Broncos.